I feel like this is like the sonic equivalent of like a Barbara Walters interview where pretty soon I'm going to start crying.
Congrats on the book. I really did love it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. You know, I'm used to promoting a record, and like when people say they listen to your album, it's like I'm also very grateful, but it's 45 minutes of their time. And now, like, to hear you say, like, I read your book, I'm like, almost I feel guilty. I was like, I feel like I took 14 hours, 8 hours, whatever it was of your life. But it really means a lot to me. Thank you.
Right off the bat in the book is interesting. Like you start with this quote from DJ Clark Kent, who says that, I have it here, I'd never take DJ off Clark Kent. It's because I'm a DJ, I've been able to do everything else I've done. So that feels resonant to your story. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. Well, Clark Kent unfortunately passed away in the past year, but he was this incredible DJ. I mean, he did so many things, and he helped discover Biggie and Jay-Z in their careers. And but I love the sentiment in that. Not only did I want to quote him because I wanted to remember him in this book, but this idea that like everywhere I've gone since has something to do with in the DNA of my years as a club DJ. Because I do think, and I am aware that people who pick up this book might only know me from the records I've made with, Amy or Bruno Mars. So some people might be like, so why are you writing this book? And I wrote it very specifically because I wanted to write it about the inner workings of the DJ's mind and the neuroses and the craziness and the ups and downs of those nights, but also because my years in the clubs and that time really influenced and had such a strong influence over the way that I made music.
I mean, that's sort of the case I want to build in our conversation today. But like, even before we get to the 90s in New York, there's like, so the book is called Night People. The original sort of night people are your parents. Like you start off the book by talking about these massive parties. You're like a little boy, Mark, like lying in bed, and there are these massive parties around you. Can you talk to us a little bit about those parties and like how it made you sort of love and appreciate and take comfort in the night?
There was a lot of reasons that, of course, it was a little unusual like that. You don't know it at the time because when you're a kid, it's just your life. But waking up in the middle of the night in London, where my parents were, they were a young couple. They liked to have fun. They hung out with all these rock and rollers. They weren't. My dad wasn't a rock and roller himself, but I would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd just open the book with a story about Robin Williams like coming in the middle of the night and him and my mom kind of like giggly, and of
Oh, you,
course
you got to
now as a
tell that story. It's a great story.
yeah, like of course now as a grown up and someone who's done plenty of drugs in my life and drank, I'm like, oh, I know what they were on. Like they're acting crazy. But yes, I was, a huge fan of Mork and Mindy. It was the biggest show of the era. I was 4 years old or whatever in London, 1979. And my door opens and Robin Williams comes in. And of course, like the fact that I didn't think that that was abnormal is almost even stranger, but he tucked me in and left. And as I was kind of falling asleep, I remember just being like, bro, you forgot. And he was like, he knew exactly what I wanted. He just turned around and he was like, Nanu, Nanu. He
Yeah.
did like his sign off. And then cutting ahead to like almost the end of the book, I did run into him about 20 years later in a restaurant. This was before I was famous. This is sort of in the late 90s. And I wanted to go up to him so bad, but I sort of chickened out. And then he was walking to the bathroom, and I was like, here's my shot. And I was like, Mr. Williams, I don't know if you remember this, but one of my clearest childhood memories is you tucking me in, and like, you'll never remember it. He's like, wait, was it your parents' house? Like the house on Circus Road, which is crazy that they lived on a house called Circus Road because our house was a circus. But he goes, yeah, man, I remember that place. Your parents threw some wild parties. And like, just from a man who lives a life like that had once been that wild, to say that my parents threw wild parties was amazing. But yes, my house was was great at night, and in the day it was not a great place to be. It was more volatile, and what goes up must come down, and partying leads to hangovers and mood swings and whatever else it was. And so I think I got pretty early on that like night is fun and daytime is difficult.
I mean, yeah, because we're going to get into sort of like the technical of how, being a DJ led to the rest of your life. But like this is where sort of emotionally or like psychologically, I find this really interesting. So you're right. Like you get like the love for the night from there. So then your mom and your dad divorce, and your mom marries Mick Jones from Foreigner, the guitarist for Foreigner. And you say this thing, like he has a home studio. You're like a tiny kid. You're going to his studio. And even right then you say, I loved the studio because I had a sense of control. Like,
Yes.
what was so interesting about that was you didn't say like possibility or like cool speakers. You said I had a sense of control.
Yeah. And that could definitely like it goes into the DJing later, but I think it was this growing up. Um, my parents were really young and they had me, and they're lovely people, and I love them very much. But together, they were combustible, and so my house was a place where I probably felt very little sense of control, and sort of always waiting for the other shoe to drop, or walking on eggshells, but one would sometimes crack. And so being in the studio, I was like, whoa, here's this thing. You shut the door, there's no outside world, and there's like these things that there's enough buttons and faders and switches to like absolutely get lost in and sort of like obliterate any sense of worry, like, because it's such a meditative process. You're alone, whatever it is, in the studio writing. So I found this kind of magic in that.
I mean, were you gifted? Like, I know you might not want to admit it, but like your stepdad's waking you up in the middle of the night to ask you for help with mixes at 3 a.m. Like, and I know that might have been silly, but like, were you kind of gifted musically?
I wasn't gifted. I wasn't. In fact, that was like one of the things that led me to DJing, was that I had no virtuosic talent
Yeah.
in music, so to speak of. I was always the least proficient member of my band, like, and guys could shred, and I was good enough, and I had the hustle energy. I'd hand out all the flyers and get us the gigs and help write the songs. But no, I wasn't. But I must have had an ear or something that he appreciated, because I would give him like my little takes on which song I liked more of the version, and it started to resonate with him. So for that reason, he did start to wake me up in the middle of the night on a school night and be like, hey, come listen to this. And I think he just loved like having a little buddy. Like, I just like, I hero worshipped him, and here's the guy who's gonna come sit on my knee and listen to the mix of I Want to Know What Love Is and tell me if it's any good or not.
I mean, we'll skip ahead and say that you start playing in bands, and you said like you're not the best musician in the band, and then and there's like early signs of your DJing in the book. There's a great story about like your mom and Mick Jones get married, and you choose "Wonderful Tonight" as when the music dies down, you knew the right song to play. But this is the song I wanted to talk to you about.
Positive over negative for the woman a master. Mother Queen's rise in the chapter. Deja vu, tell you what I'm gonna do when they reminisce over you, my God.
So Mark, can you tell us what that is?
Yes, that is They Reminisce Over You by Pete Rock and CL Smooth. And even like hearing that little snippet like over the thing still makes me kind of like emo. It's crazy.
I mean, partly because it's a sad song.
It's a sad song.
Like,
it really is.
Yeah. Like I used to play, that was in a video game I play. I think it was in like an NBA video game I used to play. And then I got into it when I started listening to music more intensely. And I learned that it's a dance party tune. It's a sad tune, yeah.
It's They Reminisce Over You, but it's an acronym for Troy, who was a friend of theirs who passed away. There's a lot of reasons, and I'm sure that's part of the reason the song resonated or got under my skin in that way, because at that point I was still playing in a band. We wanted to be like Living Color, like a loud funk metal group, and I heard that song, and I knew LL Cool J and the Beastie Boys and the more mainstream rap, but I never heard anything that was that emotive, that made me feel so much. That was hip hop, and from the moment that I heard that song, it was almost like the guitar went back in the case. I was like, I only want to be doing this from now on. And that's how I realized to do that, I had to become a DJ. I wasn't a rapper. I didn't know how to produce music at that time. So that was my lane. So I started to collect records, and then 6 months later for graduation, I, begged my mom to get me turntables.
I mean, can you play the tune in the back pocket there, Shirley? So I found this interview with you from like a few years ago where someone asked you like, what's the most important record in your life? And you said it was that tune. So that's Tom Scott, and that's Today from.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this is like the sonic equivalent of like a Barbara Walters interview where pretty soon I'm going to start crying.
I'm out of clips, by the way. That's all I got.
What's strange is that Today, the song that the sample is from, it's this cover of a song by the Jefferson Airplane, and it's quite a joyous song today. To be loving you, but there is all that I need. Like it's a love song, but there's something about the music that is just so undeniably melancholy, and that was this era when um, you would have to dig for the samples. There was no internet. There was no who sampled. And that song, the original sample from They Reminisce Over You, was like a very rare record at the time. You would see it at record conventions for like $100. So you would have to find friends who had that record that liked you enough that you could go to their house and they would play it for you. Like it really was that like ceremonial. And the first time that I heard that song, it just like it's the original. I was like, this is the DNA of my favorite song already. So now this is also my favorite song, and I still find it so moving. And I met Tom Scott recently, like a year or two ago.
No way.
Such a storied session musician. He's played on everything from Joni Mitchell to every film score ever, and is an amazing, accomplished musician and his artist in his own right. And I just was like, today, like we have to talk about the Honeysuckle Breeze. Like it's like the random record to him he made in 1969.
It's like Rosebudish with you though, man. Like because that tune is They Reminisce Over You is like formative for you. But you keep coming back to that Tom Scott tune. There's like a Mark Ronson, I think it's like refix, like not remix, but like remix of Tom Scott on like I found on like a Discogs thing one time. You keep coming back to that tune, man.
I love that tune. It has so many things that I love about it, and the Pete Rock tune as well. It's just they're because I guess those are that's ground zero of me falling in love with this music and going on the path.
You could have given it up though, like the early days of you DJing in New York is pretty rough. Like there's snowstorms and there's bad gigs where no one is there. And like I got enough buddies who have toured and they'll break up the first time there's no one at the show. And then I got buddies who are doing very well and they've continued on. And it's because I never bothered them at all. And then there was no one there.
I think at the beginning, when you love it so much you're doing it, you're happy to cart your turntables in the back of a cab in a snowstorm in New York City, which was essentially my first gig for very little money. I did so many gigs for free, or the promoters would always say, like, I will pay you if it gets off the ground, and it never got off the ground. But you don't even think about that. Like, listen, I was lucky that I came. My mom had money. I had a safety net. I was never going to fully go broke. But, you live lean and you do whatever you need to do because that's the thing you love. And in your teens and early 20s, you allow yourself that sense of discovery because you're finding what you love.
But what did you love about it? Like, what did you love about it enough that you would do it when there was no one there?
I think I loved all of these songs so much. So the idea of going into this place and being on like these huge speakers and like playing the music that I really loved, and like even if it was just the bartender and 7 people that like they had to listen to it too, and then thinking like, the bartender like being like, I wonder if I can get him like with a little more spring in his step. Like I don't know what it was. It was this thing, and I talk about it like DJing is this really funny juxtaposition of these two real opposites. There's this embarrassingly like I don't know the word I'm looking for, but you're like you're hoping that you can kind of make somebody's moment or lift somebody's moment or energy like with what you're doing and what you're providing them. And then there's also this slight conceited vanity of like, and I also wouldn't mind if they knew that it was me doing it and acknowledged it, like, and then of course now DJing where we are like with super DJs on stages in front of 100,000 people and this sort of like, worship that goes on, which is so bizarre to me as well, because, the era that I came from, you were playing hole in the wall clubs that like people were grateful if you did a good job, but you were sometimes like in a corner at the end of the bar. Your turntables might be facing the fucking wrong way.
What was the moment it turned? What was the moment can you think of a moment where it went, okay, this is starting to happen for me?
I think it was like a very slow 3-year rise with like a lot of peaks and valleys, my first 3 or 4 years, like, and then 96, 97, I played a party called Sweet Thing in New York City. And that was like my first headline gig. And I started to put all these things together, my love of all the old funk and soul and collecting all the old records that had just been sampled in the newest Jay-Z or Busta Rhymes songs and playing them. And then like really then putting together an amazing whatever hip hop set, and Biggie and Jay-Z and Big Pun and Fat Joe and these luminaries were like coming down to our little club.
I think
And
I know where
then
you're going, but I want to pause there. When those guys would come in, would you feel stressed out? Would you want to play something for them? Would you change anything?
I think there was one time that I was playing some R&B remix, Shy, featuring Jay-Z, like a quite early Jay-Z record, and he like walked into the club as it was playing, and it was just like, this is just so surreal. And this is Jay-Z like on Reasonable Doubt, or maybe with 2 or 3 records out. Biggie coming to the club. There were a lot of like underground heroes of mine, like Grand Puba or Guru from Gangstar, that would be in the club. And yes, it was there was a definitely a pinch me aspect, but at the same time, these were the people you saw a lot around the clubs in New York at this time. So it did become, I didn't become jaded to it, but it was like you were sort of used to seeing these people.
But you wouldn't pick something out they would like, or
No, and I was never like, I would never like suddenly go crazy and just like play 7 of their songs in a row, because I don't think anybody, or maybe some people do, but anybody really wants that. But these people were there, and I certainly wouldn't not play their records because they were there, because then the night would suck, because like, these guys were behind some of the best music of the time.
do they do that with you? Do DJs do that with you?
Yeah, I guess sometimes they do, but I couldn't believe it. The other night I was DJing, and just before I went about to go on, it was like this very, very young DJ, and played Valerie. I mean, it was about a half an hour before I was about to go on. And I was like, I knew that he meant it as this like gesture of like a tip of the hat or something. And I was like, is this kid crazy? Like, does he know that if he was coming up in my era and that happened? Like, I once saw like this poor DJ get like yoked up and yanked off the stage by Run DMC's tour manager once for playing this trip hop down tempo remix of like It's Tricky or something one night at the club when they were going to play an hour later. It was like, you just knew not to do that stuff. And I went up to him, I was like, that's like, it's not really like how things go, right? And he was just so apologetic and felt bad. But it was like, these were the rules and the commandments that we all knew coming up in that era. But I guess DJing, it is a bit different.
Let's skip to that moment. I think you were building towards. Can we just take a listen to this? This is kind of the key moment. This is kind of the key moment in the Mark Ronson story in this book. Can you tell the story?
So I've been DJing for a good 5 or 6 years at this point, and I kind of like made my name now. It's like not huge, but it's like had good gigs and was playing like the parties I told you about, like a Tuesday night where Biggie would come down, and but really just hip hop, R&B, disco, that was my whole thing. And one night I went to this big club. It was the trendiest, most VIP spot in New York at the time, called Spy Bar. And it was so trendy. Honestly, I would only get in 1 out of every 2 times that I went, because there was this guy at the door, King, and he was just like, he could just be like ruthless. And I saw Trump get turned away. And I go into this club, and I'm used to DJing for like mixed crowds, not a lot of like fully like white crowds, and this is all white people losing their mind. The DJ plays AC/DC Back in Black, and it sounded so monstrous, and I was just so taken aback by it. But it's a record that I hadn't really listened to since I was a teenager, and I was like, wow, I wonder if I could play this at Cheetah on a Monday night. Like, it just sounds so insane. And then, because I'm slightly like obsessive anyway, I was like, no, I have to play this at Cheetah on Monday. Cheetah on Monday was a party called Purr, which was the absolute like pinnacle of like the hip hop downtown scene. It was Missy Elliott, Mike Tyson, Janet Jackson, Aaliyah, like everybody came there. And the idea of playing that was like sort of absurd. And it's not out of line to think that like somebody might even like throw a empty bottle of champagne at you in the booth. Like this was like if you played the wrong records, and I'm still only like I've barely got my foot in the door. So I just worked out this sort of foolproof set that I thought that I would be able to sneak this song like a Trojan horse through the gates of Cheetah, which was to play the Benjamins, which was a Biggie Puffy song, the biggest song of the moment, right on the Biggie verse, switched to this rap metal version of the song that I didn't actually love, but it had heavy guitars and Biggie's rapping. And I'm like, no one's going to stop dancing while Biggie's rapping, no matter what's going on. And then right on the downbeat, as Biggie finishes us, it's all about the Benjis. Bounce, down and out. Down and out. So I do this mix that night. It's, super nervous all night leading up to it. Drop the mix, and there's a split second where the whole club freezes, and I'm like, you don't know which way it's gonna go, and then it just goes off. And because like I dropped it on beat, everyone's feet are moving. No one has a chance to think like, should we be dancing this? I don't even know. Like it just was this like eruptive moment, and it kind of from that moment on I started to be more experimental and playing different records and rock and roll and sort of like almost observing my upbringing as well and my band background and playing things like Jane's Addiction or AC/DC or Led Zeppelin in the sets, but playing them on beat and mixing them with hip hop. And that's what truly kind of set me apart, and that had a lot to do with why I kind of blew up at that moment.
It sounds like you were like you could trust yourself a little bit more after that. It sounds like you were questioning yourself before that.
I think so, and I think that it was a big swing, and the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. It was just like this thing. I was like, oh, cool. I had been emulating all my heroes up to that point, or doing my slight version of everything that I'd seen everyone else do, and I was like, I have my own thing now, and yeah, it was a big deal.
We're going to kind of transition to your production career here, but at one point you just start getting this feeling of like, I want something that's mine. Like it's fun to play other people's records, but I kind of want something that's mine.
I still love playing other people's records. I guess in some ways, I always wanted to make music, write music. I played in bands since I was 12 years old, and then I fell in love with DJing so hard. And like I said, it was like that proverbial, like the guitar went back in the case and the locks were on it, and I was DJing for 6 years. And then, but what DJing did was it informed so much of how I made music, and it got me my first production gig with Nika Costa.
Can we play that? Can we play a little bit of that tune there?
Sure.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. Last night, so I was getting ready for this, and so my wife and I we just had a baby like last month, so I had the baby in my arms.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You had one recently too, right?
I have a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month. I slept 6-month-year-old, so I had slept 2 hours last night. I'm fully delirious.
Yeah, this is two tired dads.
Yeah.
Just hammering our way through this. So the baby was asleep in my arms, and then Meg, my wife, she's like an encyclopedia of pop music, and she was a top liner for a while, and she's a piano tuner now, but she knows this music so well, and is a real student of it. And so she was taking me, I knew your music pretty well, but she was like taking me through the Gaga record and showing me what you did here and all this other stuff. And I said, I don't know that Nika Costa tune. Do you know? And she goes, no, I don't know it. And we put it on, and I was like, oh shit, I remember this tune. Like this used to be on Much Music in Canada a lot, and I remember that hook really well. Hey, by the way, great tune, holds up. And you said like one kind of led to the other, like the DJing made you a better producer when it came to that?
Yeah, well, basically, no, even more specifically, Nika was managed by this amazing guy who's no longer with us, Dominic Trenier, who managed D'Angelo. And he came up to me at one of my DJ gigs, and he had this amazing raspy voice. And he was like, yo, I got this white chick with this killer voice, and I don't know what an album's supposed to sound like, but I want it to feel like your DJ sets, AC/DC, Biggie, all that stuff, Rufus and Shaka Khan. And, I was like, cool, bring it to the crib. And, we became friends and worked on music, Nika, Justin, and I. And yes, that song that eventually came out is a weird synthesis of all of our tastes. And I was a DJ premier worshiping clone, and the beat has shades of that, and Nika's doing her amazing soulful thing, and yeah, but my first real production gig, that record really came straight out of the booth.
I watched that interview with you and Questlove talks about when he heard I think it was Rehab for the first time, the Amy Winehouse record you guys made, that he said he called Jazzy Jeff. He called all these people, these like heroes of yours, and was talking about like, this is, I mean, Mark made this, you know, Mark, the guy who did that party, you know, like Mark made this record.
Yeah.
Is it more meaningful when you get like validation for that, the kind of tune you make yourself from these kind of guys?
Of course. I mean, any validation is wonderful, and people who listen to your music, like, it's like I'm grateful anybody. But of course, that was very surreal when we made Rehab. I remember it had just come out. It was 2006, and it was so funny back then. Like, you know, a record would come out in England, but it wouldn't get to Canada or North America for like 4 months after that. So like, it was like this Amy record was coming out of England and kind of disseminating, and I was in an airport lounge about to get on a gig to DJ some gig that I probably didn't want to do, and there was a voice message from Jazzy Jeff, and you know, one of my absolute heroes. He's like, "Man, we're all big fans of this. We just heard this Nika thing. I'm like, I just wanted to say," and he just meant like by we, like the Philly crew, like him, James Poyser, Questlove, and it was so meaningful.
Oh, the
to
Amy
just-
thing, the Amy tune.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Amy tune.
Yeah.
And yeah, but with Nika Costa, yes, that was the first time that everybody who knew me as a DJ, Busta Rhymes, like came up to me in the club one time because he had, you know, been at plenty of parties I DJed, and he was like, "Yo, you did that bum ba ba," and I was like, "Yeah," and I was like, it was amazing. And then Jay-Z came up to me at a party I was DJing one time when I was playing that song. It was actually one of his own parties, like an album release party. And I actually had a feeling he was going to come up to me and be like, "Do you mind not promoting your own records? This is a Rockefeller party, you know?" And he came up to me and he said, "Yo, promise me when you do a remix, like you'll let me rhyme on it on the thing." And I was blowing my mind. Needless to say, numerous phone calls to his office the next day were not returned. But it was really crazy to like have these. Yes, to be known for these things, of course, because it's there's ego and validation involved. But I these are my heroes, you know.
So like, how does one help the other? Like when I was watching a little bit of that documentary where you about Amy, and you talk a little bit about when you guys first met, and you guys meet and you're hanging out, and she says something like, "Hey, you know, I want to make something with involving girl groups. Like I want to do an homage to that girl group sound, but try to make it a bit more modern." And you say something, I swear you say something like, "I didn't know a lot about girl groups at the time." Does being a DJ help you then? Does having a knowledge of music history, like...
I know this is a very, very coarse thing, but like if you're going to school to study law, like what do you study? You study legal precedents, like thousands of them. So this idea as a DJ, if you're the kind of DJ that's always dug for records and looked at the back and seen who's arranged what and fallen in love with all these different kind of arrangements, there is like a sort of mental bank that's being informed. But with the Amy thing was a bit more unusual because I really didn't know any girl group stuff at all. Like, and she just played me the Shangri-Las, and I just loved it. I got such an amazing feeling from meeting her after just 20 minutes. I was like, I want to work with this girl more. Hopefully I can think of something tonight that's going to impress her. I mean, and honestly, like, this is the piano where we wrote Back to Black.
Oh, cool.
I'm in the same studio where we met. But
I recognize it from the doc because they have that her doing the first vocal pass of Back to Black, which is stunning.
We only said goodbye with words. I died 100 times. You go back to her, and I go back to black. Oh, it's a bit upsetting at the end, isn't it? Oh, boom, boom, boom.
she came in and I was doing the drums because I was playing everything on the demos to Rehab in the verse because of the way she wrote the song. I was thinking, okay, well, let's do a beat like dun. Because to me, that's what those 50s songs did. But at the time, that was like the sound of the Strokes and the Libertines. That was like the modern context.
Yeah.
And she was like, she came in and she kind of would always like sometimes have a joke and give me a hard time. She was like, "Are you trying to make me sound like the bloody Libertines or something?" And she was like, "No, I'm just kidding." But yeah, we were just making that up as we went along. She would play me references, and I would take her songs and try and make them feel like the things that she loved.
What did you mean by control earlier when I said like you found control in the studio, and you said that kind of comes up more as a DJ?
There's this idea, and this is true for a lot of DJs, I'm sure. This image of DJ is like you're connecting to the crowd, and there's this sort of like love fest going on, and there is that. But I also found something very appealing in DJing, that sense of like controlling this crowd, and then the control literally of the DJ booth, like all these, just like being in the studio, the knobs and faders and dials, and like I'm in this booth, like no one can get to me in the way that like the kind of like volatile childhood that I had, like that was quite appealing. And I was talking to like, sorry to drag my therapist into this, but when I started the book, he was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I was like, "I'm working on this book. It's about DJing and sort of like, connection." And he kind of like raised an eyebrow. I was like, "Connection?" I was like, "With you, I think it's more compulsion." And I was like, yeah, he's got a point there. This idea of bringing up the crowd into this fervor. And that was the way I DJ'd. Everybody has a different style, but the way that I would try was just to bring the crowd up and up and up and up. And how much more high can I get them? Because it got me high, like off of the kind of like the ego thing of it as well.
And you can control every part of it. You don't have to rely on a bass player. You don't have to rely on a drummer. You can control every part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because when you make Uptown Funk, the story that I had heard, I was always really curious about this, that you had, the lore was that, and I only ever see it in like one sentence, and I feel like no one ever asks you about it, or maybe you just don't want to talk about it. But it always says like Mark Ronson tore his hair, lost hair, and threw up making Uptown Funk.
Yeah.
Like, why did your hair fall out making Uptown Funk? And did that have anything to do with like control, like stressing out over control?
I think stressing out over the song, probably. The way that we first started writing Uptown Funk, that the first night where we wrote the first verse and just got the general vibe of it, was so joyous. It was just like a jam session, 5 hours of playing the same groove. And then we wrote a quick verse, which is the first verse. And then it became 7 months of trying to finish the song and never being able to get what we felt like was the same just magical spirit of that first night. And we'd get together for 3 days. Bruno, God bless him, was like on tour, like running around and like coming back to his dressing room after the thing to work on it. And then sometimes we'd go in the studio for 2 or 3 days, and tempers wouldn't flare, but we were certainly sick of each other by the time, just struggling to write the song. And then I would wait a month till everybody kind of just calmed down and forgot me, like, "Hey, you guys want to get back together and finish that song?" Because I guess I had the most to lose because it was a song for my record. So by the time we were in the 5th or 6th month, I think now we had the song and we had the do do do, which really kind of gelled it. But
That you didn't like, right? You didn't like the do do do.
I didn't love it at first because I thought we were making some dirty George Clinton, like wow, like kind of wah funk Thundercat. I don't know what kind of thing it was, but Bruno is just you do not question Bruno's sense of the hook or his instincts for that ever. I learned that.
This is that ice cold Michelle fight for that white gold. This one for them hood girls, them good girls. Masterpieces, styling, wildin', living it up in the city. Got Chuck's on with Saint Laurent. Gotta kiss myself, I'm so pretty. I'm too hot. Call the police and the fireman. I'm too hot. Make a dragon wanna retire, man. I'm too hot. Say my name, you know who I am. I'm too hot. And my band about that money. Break it down.
Yeah, I was trying to record my guitar, which was really the last thing, and I wanted to play something that was kind of like unique and not just some kind of like phone it in funk thing. And the day that I was trying to play, it was like the hottest day of the year in London. Jeff Basker was only in London for one day, the producer, so we could finish. And we took a break because it was frustrating. I couldn't get to the guitar part, and on the way to the restaurant, it was so hot. I was wearing all black wool suit. Who the hell knows why? And we were sat down in the restaurant. I gotta go to the bathroom for a second. And I went in there and I threw up and fainted. And then like Jeff came back like 20 seconds later because somebody said that someone passed out on the floor, carried me back to the studio. I remember just like lying there convalescent for 3 hours on the couch, got up and we did the guitar part. So it was like, it was. I think my hair did fall out, but that could have just been at the time I was 39 years old. I was probably due for some hair loss.
I thought it was Toronto. I thought it was here that you did that. You did that
Well,
guitar.
we did. So by the time I got to Toronto, we had most of the stuff when we went into Cherry Beach because Bruno was playing Air Canada Centre, and I like came up with my same 5-string bass. Did they made me put it in the closet of the plane, and it was so bulky that it fell over during the flight, and then they couldn't open the door to like the thing, and they had to bring the flight crew on to undo the thing, and the captain couldn't get his log and all this stuff because my Uptown Funk bass had just ruined it for everybody. But got off the plane and yeah, went to Cherry Beach.
So this is how and then you finished Uptown Funk. This is how I want to close things off, and it kind of does ideally like wrap up the lessons of the book about how the DJ made you who you are, but also like maybe selfishly deals with a question I've been having about your work for a little while, which is that like I hate retro music. Like I like old music a lot. Like I listen to, you can tell by the beard, like I like a lot of old music. And when I listen to the radio and I hear something that's just doing like a pastiche of like 60s music or 70s music or 80s music, I really don't like it. I really don't like it. I turn it off. And I was thinking when I was getting ready to talk to you, and just for like weeks we've been talking about this, I don't feel that way about your records. Like I don't feel like I find that the fact that Rehab sounds like it was the 60s, like that's not even enter into my head. Like Uptown Funk, and maybe the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, they're doing an homage too. But after that, I don't think about it anymore. And I wonder if you recognize that, if that's intentional, and if it comes from being a DJ.
I think that I did drive me a little bit crazy in the beginning because had such a thin skin when people used the term retro as a tag for everything. But it's funny because there's not really an in-baked nostalgia to me using the 60s and early 70s because I wasn't alive then. So it's not, it's that kind of reasoning. These are just the sounds that just sound so good to me. And then at the same time, although I lean on these kind of some of the musicianship and the sound and the recordings of the 60s and 70s, like, yes, I'm a DJ. I want to make bangers. I want to make things that like rip in the club. And so like I love those modern elements. And like okay, I'm not Tom York, like pushing the sonosphere forward with every record that I ever make, but I do want to be a person of my time. So to be strictly retro and just to not have anything as like that has no appeal to me. But I also now embrace the fact that like yes, I love strings and I love the sound of a clavinet and a guitar going through an Ampeg.
But like, what's the difference? Like, why do I feel that way about Uptown Funk and I don't feel that way about a song that I'm not going to say because he's probably your friend? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why do I feel that way about Uptown Funk and I feel like, okay, this is sort of a timeless tune? Or, is it because as a DJ, you're mixing a lot of different genres together and different styles together and you kind of know what works?
It could be that. It could just be that you have amazing taste.
Yeah.
I don't really know. Like, who knows?
You know what I mean, though, right? Like,
I know, and I'm glad. That's the nicest thing anybody could say, because like that makes me happy if you could listen to it and you like notice those things, but you feel like it's of its time. That's really wonderful thing to hear.
Even though you say in the book, I would never play Uptown Funk, is what you say towards the end of the book.
No, I definitely play it. I just have to like give it a rest every now and then because I feel like I'm just like I get up there and it's like, really, you're still playing that one? But like that's also ridiculous because I don't go to a Billy Joel concert and be like, oh, Piano Man, huh? Like you're like, I love that song.
Yeah, Leonard Cohen made everyone stop singing. He tried to get everyone to stop singing Hallelujah for a while. Remember that?
Yeah,
it feels like that. I love the book, Mark. I'm a big fan of your music, and it's nice to get the chance to talk to you. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you so much. It's been really lovely. Thank you, Tom.